Hey, all, welcome back to another episode of NL Talks. Today, we're going to discuss the chasm, the transition period from going from a full-time job to your own time job, if you want to call it that. The whole jumping off period, jumping into the deep end of, you have a stable 9 to 5 to, hey, I'm going to try my own job, my own business, full time for myself. So Ed, why don't you tell us a little more about your story, how you did that, and kind of, what hesitations you had and how you pushed through those.
Yeah, so I always wanted to have my own company, but the biggest issue I always had was getting enough clients. And I would always do a ton of side projects, but they weren't enough to keep a stable income or have any sort of stability in my life. So I started working at a startup agency, not on purpose, but they were the ones who hired me. And I learned a ton there about how to run an agency. And since I was one of the first few people who worked there, I had a lot of titles and responsibilities. The only thing that I didn't do was the lead generation, or acquisition, or sales. I would take over the project after it was already like a solid client of the agency, and that was a stable job. I was able to get approved for all the loans I wanted and get
The Turo loans.
yeah, the Turo loans. That I was hoping that would be the job that would let me quit, but unfortunately, because of COVID and a lot of other issues that came up, well, actually, it was pretty much only COVID. If there wasn't COVID, maybe that would have gone well. The plan was to run that for 2 years, be able to pay off the stuff that we took loans out for, and then go all in on that, because then we would have a set of 100% profitable vehicles that would be paying us, and then we could get more or figure it out from there. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and I started taking on more software development jobs on the side. And when COVID started, I got really into working, and I would literally work 9 to 5 at that agency, and then 5 to midnight on my own stuff. So it would be like straight 9 a.m. I wake up, I work for one company, then I stop at 5, and until I go to bed, I work on my own stuff. And most of it was just figuring out everything, like the processes stuff, how to do that, how to hire people. I wasn't really doing much. It was more all about research. And eventually, I just got super lucky on LinkedIn, because I optimized my LinkedIn profile all about website development, e-commerce. And right when COVID started, e-commerce exploded, because every brick and mortar store was like, we need a e-commerce store now. So I got a ton of inquiries from LinkedIn of people who just needed help with WordPress sites. And two of them were really big accounts that just like said, do you want a side job to help us with this? And I was like, yeah. And they turned into basically full-time jobs, 5 to 9. And I have to squeeze in some time 9 to 5 to respond to them, because they were all full-time people at the company and they weren't working after 5. And with some of them, I lied, saying I don't have another job. This is what I do full-time, because I didn't want them to think my priorities are somewhere else. And eventually I was like, these side projects are paying me so much. They're not paying more than my job, but they're paying enough to keep going. And I had Uber in my back pocket as well,
Yeah.
which doesn't pay that much, and you have to plan on their schedule, and there are months that are very bad. But worst comes to worst, I could do Uber full time until I land another job.
Now, did as I understand, the business needed you to be full time. It wasn't just like, hey, this is comfortable to do. It's like there's an impasse in the business, and I need to do more time, or else it's gonna kind of.
That's basically where I got to, where I was like, every lead I talk with, I can't schedule a meeting with them because they want to talk during the day, and I don't want to start making excuses or not being able to work during the day for the full-time job I had. And I kind of hit an impasse where I was like, if we want to land clients that will pay me enough to grow the company, I really need to be in it full time, or at least part time, so that I can schedule these meetings at the times they want to talk, not the times that I'm available, which would be after 5, which is the times that they all don't want to talk.
Yeah.
And I've had that issue with a few clients where they want their assistant or somebody who's working at the company to talk with me, and they're not interested in talking after 5. So I did run into that issue a few times where I had to like leave for lunch or use my lunch to have a meeting, and that's no way to run a company. It's taking lunches while you're at your other job to do client meetings. Obviously, I only had one lunch too, so I could only handle one client a day if I had to do that. So that wasn't scalable, and in general, I just felt like I felt like a fraud saying that I run the company if I'm really at another company full time. So that was really the impasse where I was like, we can't land bigger clients unless I'm really full time in the sales position at our company. And the things that I had in place were Uber as a backup. I had two big projects. The problem with those were I didn't know how long they would last, so that was a huge risk because I didn't know if they would stop the project after a few weeks or a few months or what. Luckily, they all went on for a while. I had three big projects that were about half my salary total for the year, so they all were enough to keep it going. I also had a ton in savings before I took that plunge, so I had about 3 months out or maybe more. I also moved, which was not the best timing. I just moved and we bought a ton of furniture, so a lot of my savings went into buying furniture and just household supplies. But it was still enough to carry on for a few months to half a year without any work at all. So I was like, I have enough saved up. I have Uber as a backup if I really need cash. I have two big accounts that are already paying me. And I have like three people who were asking me for work, but I couldn't give them the amount of time they wanted. So the second, or I kind of reached that conclusion where I was like, I need to quit or at least go part time. And that was a very hard call with my boss because I lied to him too. When I did the exit interview, I said I have another position lined up, but really I was just quitting for nothing.
I mean, I would argue you do have another position.
I think that app that went south was what I said was going to be my full-time position.
Oh, the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, it was that long ago that you quit?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it.
That was
Wow,
about
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I was
3 years
still
ago?
working there when they approached us with that.
Was that 3 years ago?
About 2.5.
2.5.
And no, maybe it wasn't that long. It was like we're this is the 2 year mark because it was in November when I quit. So this is like slightly over 2 years now.
Okay. Because I remember I was in my apartment when we started that project. So maybe we started that project before and then after. Anyways, regardless.
So I had those three things. I had a ton of savings, which ran out very quickly. So make sure you have a ton of savings if you do that, unless you're living with your parents or don't have any expenses.
If you can live with your parents, do it.
That was the biggest mistake I made. I should have done this when I was still with my parents because I had literally no expenses besides the credit card bills I racked up myself, which I could have paid off quickly if I didn't rent an apartment. But yeah, so I had all of that. And my third kind of backup plan was the current company I worked at. It was still a very small company, and I assumed that me leaving would completely cripple them. Not cripple them, but it was like 1/3 of the company would be leaving, and it would be very hard to fill somebody in quickly for that. So I didn't want to just say, you have 2 weeks, and after that I'm gone. So I offered to work part-time and do the same work I'm doing, but on a contract basis rather than a full-time basis. And I thought he was going to get mad at me for leaving and be like, no, but he's our best client now. And we've continued to do work with him still. And we refer work back and forth to each other, which is great. So that turned out as best as it could have. That I wasn't counting on, though. That I was planning on going south. But I think that plus the the 3 projects we had really carried the few months where I quit and had no other income coming in. I also got very scared right after and started applying to every job possible, which turned out to be a great thing because 2 of them now use us as their web development outsourcing team, which also worked out as perfectly as it could have. Although at the time, that position that I got was like 2 times the salary and the title I wanted, but they lost a client that was like carrying the whole development team, and because of that, they ended up telling me that there's no work. So I kind of got hired and fired at the same time. But then they became our best referral partner. So they send us a ton of work as well. And landing the first few clients was all inbound stuff. So I didn't really do any marketing or development work, like sales development work. I just put out my profile and people found me, which is not a way to grow a business, but it is a way to get some leads to come to you. And I think that was all just luck that those two big leads approached me with me not doing anything. Well, I did do something. I optimized the profile. I wrote what I did, stuff like that, and they liked what they saw and they wanted me specifically. That also became an issue later on because everyone who hired me to do their work they were hiring me, not the agency that I was building. So there was also a phase where I had to say, like, I'm not doing the work. I have people doing the work. That was also an iffy phase where I was afraid of losing clients.
I remember that. Yeah, there's like a couple of clients where the whole idea of them hiring you was, hey, I have an individual who will like kind of force, look over everything. But it's like, hey, now we have contractors and stuff, and like how to have that discussion.
Yeah, and luckily almost nobody cared. I overthought it way too much. As long as I was still involved. I think if I completely excluded myself, there may have been issues, but I was still like overlooking the project and doing most of the communications. But
so you say that's how you grew the business from kind of just like a side thing to a full-time agency and everything.
That's how I turned my side projects into my full-time job by and not really losing my salary, because that was a big thing that I didn't want to like quit that job and then not have any money at all. But there was definitely a few months of like, there's no new projects. I need some extra cash to keep paying for stuff or downgrade stuff, which I did do eventually. I sold all the cars that were on Turo and my personal ones and bought more realistic cars to use as daily drivers. I also got rid of most of the technology I had. There was definitely like down points where I was like, I need to sell everything I have to pay for next month because I won't have any money to pay the bills, and obviously I can't not pay rent or bills. So anything I could do, sold everything that I could without me needing it. And then I would do Uber on the weekends if I was like really knew that we were about to not have money to pay for stuff. Luckily, there were only like 3 points where I really had to ask for a loan or do something drastic. But eventually, I built up enough recurring clients to where at least my recurring bills are all paid for, and any additional cash is more for continuing to grow the company and pay contractors and make sure that things keep going. But there was definitely a year of like really hard struggle where I couldn't afford to do anything I wanted to do. Had to sell everything. I had to cancel any unneeded services.
And I remember there's a time where you were like, hey, if we don't get this going in like 3 months, I'm applying to jobs and like winding down the business.
Yeah, there was definitely a point where because I was just unhappy that I kept selling everything the other issue I had was I had a really nice job before. It was stable, it was comfortable. I could afford everything I wanted to afford. Obviously, I couldn't afford like really luxurious things, but I was comfortable.
Yeah.
And going from that to like not having any income 1 month is crazy. And there were like 3 months in a row where I couldn't get any new projects coming in. And if I didn't, back then when I didn't have recurring coming in every month, I had to keep selling stuff and I had to keep upselling existing customers and stuff to make sure we had enough money, or I had enough money at that point to at least pay my bills. And I didn't want to keep feeling that way. So I was like, if I don't get the recurrent clients by X date, I'm just going to apply the jobs, wind down the company, and then maybe come back to it once I have enough savings again to attempt it.
Well, it seems like you had multiple instances where, you just kind of had a gut feeling saying like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work out. Like, how did you push through? How did you, not give up? How did you get through that kind of impasse?
There were definitely moments that were very turnkey, like landing a big client or selling so much that I think every time I got very pushed against the wall, I just outsold anything I could possibly sell. So I would like sell double or triple like the previous month.
Yeah.
There were also a lot of moments where it was more of like the projects we did do went super sideways, and I spent so much time trying to recover from that I wasn't selling new stuff. And that was usually what caused that issue where I wasn't keeping it stable.
Mm-hmm.
There were also a lot of issues where like hiring people went super rough. The first year I couldn't find a single dev who could live up to my expectations. Luckily, that was like a turnkey moment. I found one dev who was just so good at doing stuff without me that I was like, I can give him a project and I don't have to worry about it. And then another dev, and then, you know, that compounds, and eventually you figure out how to hire people correctly, or you know when to stop giving them work. There were a lot of like employees who I had to over explain stuff to. That was really annoying. So there were a lot of ups and downs, but usually there was like one really turnkey thing that was like, this is why I'm trying to do this. And I always have that gut feeling of like, this can be better, or there is a better option. So like definitely hiring that dev who I feel like I can just give stuff to without worrying about it. That was a turnkey moment. Another turnkey moment was when I sold 3 times more than I did every month in 1 month. So I was really under the previous few months though.
Yeah.
So that
We're under right now. We're actually very under. So if you want to go and sell 3 times, go for it.
well, yeah, it seems like if I'm stressed out, I'm able to do that. But it's also like not great sales sometimes. It's like stuff that I know I'm going to lose money on, but we'll get the money in now so I can pay for whatever we need to pay for.
Kind of like the sweat equity is what you're paying in.
Yeah. Or I like have to tell clients like we need payment up front or something like that, where it's not like an ideal situation, but they usually understand.
Yeah.
Or I just like force a sale out of somebody who is like on the edge, and I'm like, if we don't do this now, like we won't have time later.
Because we'll be so busy. We'll be dissolved.
No, because I accepted so many other projects that we're not going to make money on.
Yeah.
And another huge turnkey was marketing. I feel like that was the biggest issue I feel like I always had was I knew all aspects of the agency besides how to get the lead in the door. I don't know how, but I was good at sales. I think it was because of my previous job at the retail store.
Well, you were doing sales there.
But it wasn't like it wasn't the same type of sales.
Okay.
But it was still, you talk to people, you explain to them what you or they tell you what they need, and then you find a product that fits. With this type of sales, it's a little different because you can make the product they need. It's more of convincing them that you're the right person to make the product. But maybe inadvertently at the other agency, when people sent requests and I sent them like estimates, that was kind of sales.
Yeah.
But they already like are sold on hiring us. It was more of just, are the hours too much or not?
Yeah.
But it was kind of inadvertently sales. But I never dealt with like a new lead that just came in. I would always be dealing with customers who already paid and are expecting us to do the work. So that was like one piece of the puzzle that I felt like I was always missing. And I've hired multiple people to try to figure this out for me, but they were successful to a degree, but I felt like my gut feeling was that this can be way more successful. And when I started to do it myself, I got the same results for a very long time, but I was like, there's something that I'm doing wrong and I can't figure it out. And I just kept hiring consultants and asking people and figuring out what was wrong. And I finally hit the nail on what we were doing wrong. And that was a huge turnkey moment where I'm like, now we got to go full steam ahead on it. I want to accept investments because I know this worked. So if I pour more money into it, I'm sure it'll turn out good. Stuff like that kept me going.
For the listeners, what was that thing?
The marketing thing?
It was just like our marketing episode we did?
Yeah, it was literally the previous marketing episode. It was everyone I asked that ran an agency said referrals. And I was like, that's stupid. How can you build an agency from referrals? I was thinking like customer referrals, and you can't really... you can't calculate how many referrals a customer is going to give you. So I was like, that can't be the key. So I was like, we're going to focus on ads. We're going to focus on getting the customers directly, focus on security, focus on X.
Yeah.
Everything we did was horrible. Like none of them had the success that we should be getting. And talking to that Uber passenger who sold a $1 billion company, she mentioned that it's referrals. And I was like, if everyone says it's referrals and she says it's referrals, I'm definitely in the wrong here.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to figure out how to get referrals.
But the distinction is it's partner referrals, not
Yes,
customer.
exactly. It's not asking customers for referrals, it's building partnerships that will refer
Yeah.
with strategically planned people who work with people we want to work with already. So for us, we work with a lot of marketing consultants and marketing professionals at bigger companies. And when I told them we're a web development company that knows the marketing side of a website, they were all like, that's exactly what we've been looking for. Everyone we've hired in the past doesn't understand the marketing side. They just want to do the development, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, this was a nail on the head. I had 20 meetings. Everyone said the same thing.
From that email campaign. Cold email.
Yes, it was a cold email campaign. So now I know for sure if I run ads targeted at marketing professionals with that message, and we're going to throw in a lead magnet as well on it, so it'll be extra successful.
Yeah.
I also have a consultant who recently sold this company, and he made all of his money off of social media marketing. So he's a pretty solid person to help us with that campaign. But he's given me a ton of ideas, and he said it's all about giving something for free. And once they see that you could do it for free or do what they want for free without it costing you too much, obviously, then they'll want to work more with you. So the lead magnet I want to do is a consultation call where I tell the marketing team what the technical issues are with their site, because they don't know the technical issues, they know the marketing issues. What they don't know is like, is the site too slow? Is it missing this? Is there extra stuff that's not needed? Is there a security issue?
Things that like they could have the best copy, but if the website isn't performing, it's not
exactly gonna... Yeah. And they're usually missing that piece, or they know about it but they don't know how to check it, or they don't know how to fix it. So recently I fixed one of those technical issues for a marketing consultant, and he was beyond thrilled. And it was like a 5-minute fix for me. So it's not a huge investment on my end, but it shows them that we really know how to do the technical side of it.
And did it for free. It's not like you're like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm going to
exactly.
bill you for this.
Exactly. And those are like really easy things that we can... And he didn't know how to do it because there's a lot of scripts, and if you disable the wrong script, you'll break the site. So I went through and I made sure the scripts that are needed are enabled and the scripts that aren't are disabled, and his score went from like a 60 to a 90, and he was like, this is the best possible outcome that could have happened.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, and that has really motivated me to keep going now. That was like the most recent thing that happened. Also, like a few weeks before that campaign really went well. So I'm hoping that that campaign continues to go well. I make more partnerships. I refer more marketing clients to those consultants who I talked with. And then we focus on the social media aspect, which is the same target audience with the same offer, but it'll be directly to the marketing team rather than a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same exact audience, just they're in a different position. And that one's going to be more of a at scale ad campaign rather than a direct to the consultant campaign, because I don't think directly emailing a marketing lead at a company is going to be effective. They're going to want to reach out or see an ad that shows we know how to do it. It's also about knowing where to target the right people. Like consultants work with an email campaign because they're mostly on their email and they're not going to look at ads. But marketing people, although I could be wrong about this, but my gut feeling says that email for consultants and then ad strategy or campaign for direct marketing team people.
So just to switch gears a little bit back to the transition period, right? This is the light at the end of the tunnel. You're talking about how to really expand the marketing and such, and nail on the head, right? If you were to go back and tell your younger self, not that it was that much younger, but younger self when you're switching off, right? You're like, hey, don't leave your parents' house unless you absolutely need to, like try to stay there for a while. Make sure that you have enough saved up, right?
Make sure you have a backup plan. Yeah, so let me go through the list of things. So
yeah.
One is, if you have enough clients, because don't go off the deep end with no experience at all, because you're definitely going to fail.
So I shouldn't quit my job with 0 clients and just try to wing it?
I would say at least do some side projects so you feel comfortable and you know how it works.
Yeah.
Or if the company you're working at currently does exactly what you plan on doing, then you'll be fine. But if you're like a CMO of Nike, for example, and you want to start your own shoe brand, that's going to be a wildly different experience than what your current role is. Maybe you'll be successful, but I would say take that a little easier than if you were, a developer at an agency where you do multiple projects and that's what you want to jump into now, because at least you know how it'll work. But definitely have savings for at least 3 months or more. I would say more if you don't have business experience, because you don't know when you're going to get the new leads coming. Like for me, it took 2 years. I would get leads, but they weren't consistent and it wasn't predictable.
You didn't know why or how.
No, I didn't. Well, I knew why and how, but I couldn't scale it.
Okay.
It was always because they found us. So there were two ways we would get leads. It would be somebody Googled web developer near me, and we would literally just be the closest in proximity. Or they would look me up on LinkedIn. They would be looking for some specific skill on LinkedIn that my profile had. Those were the only two ways we got leads for the 2 years. Or it was a referral from somebody we worked with before, or an agency who we work with that doesn't do development would refer us work. So it was always those three channels. It was a referral from a previous job, a inbound from Google Maps, or an inbound from LinkedIn. And there were also some organic website searches. I don't know how those people found us. I'm pretty sure it was also Google Maps, but they just didn't say it because we don't rank. No,
yeah.
There's no way they scrolled to page 30 and found whatever keyword we're ranking for.
So yeah, the savings.
Yeah, savings. I would get at least 2 clients that will be able to pay you full time, or at least enough. Those 2 combined should be enough for you to live off of. Because if you do that with no money, then you're you're gonna be scrummaging to get leads right away, and you're gonna make bad decisions.
And plus, as I've seen with you, it's like you may get leads, or you may be doing all these discovery calls, and then you actually have a lot less time than when you were doing it half and half, because you're in all these meetings that may not end up anywhere. So you actually kind of have less time in a weird way, because you're like trying all these things.
Yeah, that's the other problem, is when you scale your marketing, you're not gonna have time to do the work yourself, and unless you have a good stable referral funnel, you're not going to be able to survive off of that. But if you do get 2 really good clients, or maybe an agency that wants to refer you their work, or you work white label, or you literally just work as a contractor for another company, I would say that honestly, get a part-time job working as whatever role you want to work at as a contractor, or get a part-time job at a minimum wage job just so your bills are paid. Because I feel like that's the biggest issue. If your bills aren't met by the income you're getting, that's when you start making really bad decisions, and you start accepting projects you don't know how to do, or you start just lying on calls to get the project, or you
undervaluing it, so then you're losing money at the end.
Yeah, or you're just making it so cheap that it makes no sense for them not to get it, but it makes no sense for you to do it either.
Yeah.
It still makes sense for you to do it if you really need it, but you can't scale it. Then you get stuck doing the work, and you can't focus on the bigger decisions, which you should be focusing on if you're trying to grow the company. And that's kind of where a lot of people get stuck, where they can't get more work, or they're taking on too many projects at too low of a rate and they can't delegate it. That was definitely where I got stuck for the first year. Every project I took, I underbid and won it, but then I couldn't find anybody to delegate it to, because nobody would want to do it for the amount I'm offering. Even if I broke even, I couldn't find somebody good enough to do it. So I had to do them all myself, and then I would have cycles of like, I can't get more sales because I'm too focused on projects. And then I finished the projects, and now there's no sales. There's no new projects lined up because I didn't do any sales. It's also very hard to do it yourself without a stable referral funnel, or somebody, or like a side job that's paying your bills, so you don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd say get a side job, or have clients lined up. Have savings for 3 to 6 months. I would go for 6 months ideally, but obviously that might not be possible. Make sure you really want to do it. It's going to be a lot of work, 80-hour or 24-hour days some days. I've definitely pulled all like 2 days in a row of just having to do the work because I didn't want to lose a customer, and the contract just screwed me over. And that's something you're going to have to do if you want to keep the clients, especially if they're a big client. You don't want to lose them and you got screwed over by whoever you hired. If you lose that customer, your whole company is gone, because that's what you're relying on for income, and you can't lose that, obviously. Then also the backup, I would have a backup plan. Like my backup plan was Uber. If the 2 leads or clients I had stopped paying me, I always had Uber to go back off of.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's not a huge amount, but it would be enough to pay the bills if I really needed it. And then the biggest mistake I think I made was move out of my parents' house before.
Yeah.
I literally moved out and then quit. I should have done it the other way.
Yeah.
But I think in retrospect, it was all good because I got a lot of experience from that job. I should have just stayed with my parents longer and quit while I stayed with my parents, and then it would have been a lot easier to not be worried about finances. And then the other thing would be so you have the backup plan, not move out. Also, not hire anybody full time as long as possible, and only hire consultants at a high rate, or competent consultants at a high rate. Don't try to delegate core business aspects. Like, I tried to delegate everything too quick. Well, I tried to delegate things I didn't know too quickly, and then I managed things that I should have delegated faster too long. So in retrospect, I should have delegated development work as soon as possible, development and design work, and I should have focused on marketing. Because development and design I knew really well, and I could tell if somebody was doing it wrong. But with marketing, I had no clue. I should have done my research and figured out how to do it correctly myself, and then hire somebody to delegate doing that out. Also, I would delegate sales last, because people are way more likely to buy from the CEO or the owner or whoever knows what's actually going on. Because when you hire a salesperson, they're not going to understand the product inside and out like you do.
Yeah.
So I think those are my main takeaways. That definitely the biggest mistake I made was to hire somebody full time before I knew how to do that role myself.
Yeah, I remember earlier on when you started to do the delegation stuff, even for developers, because we did try to delegate to developers.
It's very hard, but at least with that role, I could I could judge very quickly if they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I think the reason why it was so hard at the time was because we didn't have enough budget to get a good developer.
Budget's always a huge issue. And contractors are not as reliable.
Yeah.
So that's always a balancing act.
And then you find like a gold mine or needle in a haystack where you have a developer who's amazing, but then also is within the budget, and you're like, wow, like, can we multiply this person by 10? Like,
I would say maybe in retrospect, I should have hired an agency and asked for a white label rate.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to get people directly. Because that agency would know what they were doing and they would handle all those issues. And then when we had enough money, we could start hiring people full time rather than me trying to make the team myself. I spent a lot of time building the team we have. And there were a few episodes ago I explained how I built that team.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of white label solutions that are very affordable. Well, not very affordable, but if you price your services at a reasonable price, you can find an offshore or even a nearshore or even an onshore.
Whoa.
A company that will do what you need. Obviously, the pricing will be different based on where you go, and the quality will be slightly different. It'll be harder to communicate if you do offshore, but they'll still do the work correctly. Also, if your company's all about US, obviously you can't offshore, because a lot of companies are proud to have only US employees.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're doing all your branding around that, you can't go offshore. I would start looking for onshore teams, or just look into contractors. Also, something to look into is if you can hire contractors in your state, because in our specific state, you can't hire contractors to do your core business, but you can hire an agency at whatever rate you want to do core aspects of your business. So all of our contractors, even though I'd rather pay them directly, they're all working through Upwork, because Upwork is the agency that we're using to hire our talent.
Yeah.
So that's something that I ran into.
Because you need to give them benefits or something if you do, right?
There's like some small legal issue. You have to pay them above minimum wage. That's one of the issues. Because I wasn't paying them under minimum wage, but if they were working overtime or stuff like that, it would become really tricky.
Yeah.
And then there was also, I think if every 8 hours work, they get 1 hour off or something.
Oh, this paid sick time or something. This paid sick leave.
Which aren't huge issues, but you have to put them on payroll, pay all the payroll stuff.
That costs a lot of money to do payroll stuff.
It's way more work than is worth when you're just starting it. It's also not something you should be worried about when you're starting out.
No. It should be a lot easier to just get up and running.
Yeah, so hiring agencies, I think, would have been a better call to start out, because they can take the hit if they misprice something. And if you misprice something and your contractor's billing you hourly, you also get in a pickle.
Yeah.
But yeah, that pretty much sums up how I went from side gig to full-time agency founder.
Awesome. Exciting stuff. Cool. 21st episode. Here we come.
Yes.
Awesome.
Have a great one, everybody.
Thanks for watching all.
We'll hopefully have many more episodes to come.
Sure will. Bye now.